1958. The Alvis factory, Holyhead Road, Coventry. British engineers roll out a vehicle that looks like someone bolted a tank turret onto a car. 6 wheels, a 76mm gun, 11.5 tons of armoured steel sitting on rubber tyres instead of tracks. The officers from the Royal Armoured Corps who came to inspect it were sceptical. Armoured cars were supposed to carry machine guns, maybe a 2-pounder at best. This thing carried a weapon capable of demolishing a concrete bunker from over 2 kilometres away. It looked ridiculous. It looked wrong. It would go on to serve on 4 continents, fight in more wars than any other British armoured vehicle of its generation, equip over 20 nations, and remain in military service for more than 65 years. Its name was the FV601 Saladin, and it was the last great armoured car Britain ever built. To understand why the Saladin existed, you need to understand the problem Britain faced in 1946. The war was over. The Empire was not. Britain still controlled territory stretching from Malaya to the Middle East, from Africa to Hong Kong. Policing that empire required fast, mobile, hard-hitting vehicles that could deploy rapidly along roads, cover vast distances on minimal fuel, and fight when they arrived. Tanks were too heavy, too slow, too expensive, and they chewed up the roads that colonial administrators needed intact. Armoured cars were the answer, and Britain had built more of them during World War II than any other nation. But by 1946, those wartime cars were obsolete. The Daimler Mark II and AEC Mark III had served brilliantly, but their guns, 2-pounders and 6-pounders respectively, lacked the high explosive capability needed for the kind of fighting Britain now expected. Colonial warfare meant attacking fortified villages, suppressing ambushes, and destroying enemy positions, not duelling other tanks across the North African desert. What Britain needed was an armoured car with a gun big enough to flatten a building, versatile enough to fight infantry, and capable enough to knock out any light armoured vehicle it might encounter. The requirement issued in January 1946 called for a 6x6 wheeled armoured car to replace everything in the inventory. Alvis of Coventry, a company famous for building elegant sporting cars like the Speed 20 and the 4.3-litre, was appointed design parent alongside the Fighting Vehicles Research and Development Establishment at Chertsey. The original 1947 specification was modest. A 4-man crew, a 2-pounder gun fitted with a Little John squeeze bore adapter, essentially the same firepower British armoured cars had carried since 1941. Then, according to the R.M. Sotheby's catalogue for a surviving vehicle, someone had what they described as an attack of sense. The 2-pounder's high explosive content was insignificant. Against a mud brick compound or a machine gun nest, it was practically useless. The armament design establishment at Fort Halstead was commissioned to develop an entirely new weapon from scratch. The result was the 76mm L5A1, a low-pressure rifled gun firing fixed ammunition at a muzzle velocity of roughly 533 meters per second. Its signature round was HESH, High Explosive Squash Head, a uniquely British invention. The plastic explosive deforms against the target's surface on impact, and when the base fuse detonates, it sends a shock wave through the armour that blasts lethal fragments, called spall, off the interior face. The round could penetrate approximately 80mm of rolled homogeneous armour. Against concrete, it was devastating. Against infantry in the open, a high explosive round or canister shot turned the gun into a giant shotgun effective to 100 meters. 1 weapon, 5 ammunition types, every target covered. Then came the delay that nearly killed the project and ultimately saved it. In 1948, the Malayan emergency erupted. Communist insurgents were ambushing rubber plantation workers and attacking police stations across the peninsula. The British Army needed armoured personnel carriers immediately. The FV600 chassis that Alvis had designed for the Saladin could be adapted. Flip the layout, put the engine at the front instead of the rear, add a troop compartment, and you had the FV603 Saracen, an armoured personnel carrier. The Saracen was rushed into production. The first prototype was delivered in June 1951, and vehicles reached Malaya by 1953. The Saladin, the vehicle the whole family was designed around, was pushed to the back of the queue. 6 pre-production hulls were farmed out to Crossley Motors in Stockport, in the hope that the contract might save the struggling firm. It did not. Crossley went under anyway. Production of the definitive Saladin Mark II finally began at Coventry in 1958, a full 12 years after the original requirement was issued. That delay was a disguised blessing. Had the Saladin entered service on schedule in the early 1950s, it would have carried the obsolete 2-pounder. Instead, British troops received the 76mm gun, a weapon that would prove itself across decades of combat. The vehicle itself was a masterpiece of practical engineering. According to Army Guide technical data, the Saladin weighed 11,590 kilograms combat loaded. It measured 5,284 millimeters long with the gun forward, 2,540 millimeters wide, and 2,390 millimeters tall. Ground clearance was a generous 426 millimeters. Power came from the Rolls-Royce B80 Mark 6A, an inline 8-cylinder water-cooled petrol engine displacing 5,675 cubic centimeters and producing 170 horsepower at 3,750 revolutions per minute. This engine shared its lineage with the power plant in the Rolls-Royce Phantom 4, a car so exclusive that only 18 were ever made, all for royalty and heads of state. The military version was deliberately designed with a low compression ratio of 6.4 to 1, allowing it to run on terrible low-octane fuel available in austere conditions anywhere in the world. It was mated to a Daimler epicyclic pre-selective gearbox, offering 5 forward and 5 reverse speeds. That equal reverse speed capability was not a novelty. For a reconnaissance vehicle that might need to withdraw under fire at full speed, it was essential. Top road speed was 72 km per hour. Cross-country, crews could manage roughly 48. Range on the 240-litre fuel tank was 400 kilometers on roads. The vehicle could ford water to 1.07 meters unprepared, climb a 46% gradient, and cross a 1.52-meter trench. The hull was all welded steel. Maximum armour was 32 mm on the turret front, with hull glacis plates of 12 to 14 mm angled at 45 degrees. This gave reliable protection against 12.7 mm heavy machine gun rounds from all angles. It would not stop a rocket-propelled grenade, but it was double the protection offered by the Saladin's chief competitor, the French Panhard AML-90, which could be penetrated by any heavy machine gun. The six-wheel drive system used a transfer box feeding front and rear axles through transmission shafts, with epicyclic reduction gears at each wheel hub. Suspension was fully independent at all 6 stations, using double wishbone arms with longitudinal torsion bars. Steering was hydraulically power-assisted on the front and centre wheel pairs. The 12.00x20 track grip pneumatic tyres featured run-flat inserts, allowing continued driving after puncture. The vehicle could keep operating with up to 2 wheels completely destroyed. In Aden, where mines were a constant threat, this capability repeatedly saved lives. The 3-man crew consisted of a driver in the front centre hull, a gunner on the left side of the turret, and a commander on the right who also served as loader. The turret carried 42 rounds of 76mm ammunition in 5 types: HES, H, high explosive, canister, smoke, and illuminating, plus 2,750 rounds of 7.62mm for the coaxial and commander's Browning machine guns. 6 smoke discharges sat on each side of the turret. Now, before we get into where this vehicle actually fought, if you are enjoying this deep dive into British engineering, hit subscribe. It takes a second, costs nothing, and helps the channel grow. Right, let us get into the combat record. Aden was where the Saladin proved itself beyond any doubt. The Queen's Dragoon Guards operated Saladins there from 1966 to 67, widely dispersed across Sheikh Othman, the Radfan Mountains, and the Lahij Plain. According to the regimental history, the fighting was intense and constant. At Haberlane in January 1967, dissidents attacked the camp at night. Saladins responded with 28 belts of Browning ammunition and 46 rounds of 76mm, beating off the assault. Blood traces were found the next morning. During the UN mission visit in April, the regiment was involved in more than 90 separate incidents over just 5 days, including 3 major street fights lasting over 30 minutes each, expending 6,000 rounds of machine gun ammunition. One of the most dramatic moments came in June 1967 during the Battle of Sheikh Othman. Lieutenant Grounds narrowly escaped death when a rocket was fired from a building, skimmed over one mudguard, slid across the glacis plate, bounced off the other mudguard, and exploded on the road barely a yard in front of his Saladin. When the South Arabian Army mutinied on the 20th of June, Lieutenant Jenkins's troop came under heavy fire that shredded his Saladin's tyres, but the run-flat inserts kept the vehicle moving, allowing the crew to withdraw to safety. In Borneo during the confrontation with Indonesia, the Saladin faced a different challenge. Veteran Richard Hardman of the 4th Royal Tank Regiment described movement off the single road as virtually impossible. Saladins were confined to convoy escort and static fire support from sandbagged positions. At Batu Lintang, 2 Saladins dug in with 1st 10th Gurkha rifles helped repel an Indonesian incursion. Hardman noted one bitter irony. Britain had sold Saladins to Indonesia, meaning both sides of the confrontation were operating exactly the same armoured vehicle. Northern Ireland presented perhaps the strangest chapter in the Saladin's career. Deployed from 1969, the vehicle was considered too aggressive for the political sensitivities of the Troubles. According to unverified accounts from veterans, the 76mm gun barrel was plugged with a wooden bung. No main armament ammunition was carried. Only a few boxes of 7.62mm were provided. The most powerful British armoured car in service was reduced to an oversized road patrol vehicle, its main gun deliberately neutered. Beyond British service, the Saladin fought across the globe. In Oman during the Dhofar War from 1971 to 76, the Sultan's armoured car squadron operated roughly 36 Saladins, often crewed by British lone servicemen, supporting SAS and Furka operations against Marxist rebels in some of the harshest terrain on Earth. The Dhofar campaign tested the Saladin in conditions that would have broken lesser vehicles. Temperatures exceeded 50 degrees Celsius. Roads barely existed. Rebel fighters armed with Soviet weapons ambushed convoys along the coastal plain and the Jebel Akhdar escarpment. Saladins were regularly hit by Katyusha rockets, mines, and RPGs. The vehicles were repaired, often in the field, and sent straight back into action. The 76mm HESH round proved ideal for engaging rebel positions in rocky terrain, where the Spall effect sent stone fragments spraying through cave entrances and sangars that conventional high explosive would have struggled to penetrate. In Kuwait during the Iraqi invasion of August 1990, Kuwaiti Saladins were filmed fighting on the streets of Kuwait City at the Battle of Dasman Palace. Tank Encyclopedia described this footage as one of the more enduring images of the Iraqi invasion. In Honduras, ex-German Saladins appeared on the streets of Tegucigalpa during the 2009 coup, still operational more than 50 years after manufacture. A total of 1,177 Saladins were built at Coventry between 1958 and 1972, with exports going to over 20 nations. West Germany was the first foreign customer, taking 97 of the FV601D variant for its federal border guard. The largest orders came from Jordan at 130, Honduras at 72, the UAE at 70, Indonesia at 69, and Kuwait at 60. Australia took vehicles and later mounted their turrets on M113A1 armoured personnel carriers to create fire support vehicles that saw action in Vietnam. Multiple sources note that the name Saladin, referencing the legendary 12th century Muslim commander, resonated with Middle Eastern buyers, though whether this was deliberate marketing or fortunate coincidence remains unclear. Now, how did the Saladin compare to its rivals? The French Panhard AML-90 was lighter at 5.5 tons versus the Saladin's 11.6, faster at 90 to 100 km per hour, cheaper, and mounted a 90mm gun whose HEAT round could penetrate 320mm of armour, 4 times the Saladin's HESH capability. It sold over 4,800 units to more than 54 countries. On paper, it looked superior. In practice, the Saladin offered double the armour protection, 32mm versus 12, meaning the AML could be killed by any heavy machine gun while the Saladin could not. It carried more than double the ammunition, 42 rounds versus 20. Its 6x6 drivetrain gave superior cross-country mobility compared to the AML's 4x4 layout. For armies that needed a vehicle to survive sustained combat in harsh conditions, rather than simply patrol a road, the Saladin was the better machine. The Soviet BRDM-2 was not truly comparable. Armed only with a 14.5mm machine gun, it could not penetrate the Saladin's frontal armour at normal engagement ranges. The Saladin's 76mm would destroy a BRDM-2 with a single round. The Soviet vehicle did possess capabilities the Saladin entirely lacked: full amphibious operation, NBC protection, and 750 kilometers of range. But the doctrinal difference was fundamental. The Soviets built vehicles to observe and avoid contact. The British built vehicles to fight for intelligence. The Saladin served the British Army for approximately 33 years before being replaced by 2 vehicles, neither of which individually matched all its qualities. The FV601 Scorpion, a tractor-light tank carrying a derivative of the same 76mm gun, entered frontline service from 1972. The FV721 Fox, a 4x4 wheeled car with a 30mm Armoured cannon, took over the wheeled reconnaissance role from 1973. The Fox was notoriously top-heavy and prone to tipping on side slopes. The Scorpion abandoned the wheeled mobility that had defined British armoured car doctrine for decades. Neither lasted as long in foreign service as the vehicle they replaced. As of recent records, Saladins remained in at least nominal service with Mauritania, Nigeria, Tunisia, and Sri Lanka. Indonesia modernised 16 through state manufacturer Pindad in 2016. The type's active service life of over 65 years places it among the longest-serving armoured vehicles in history. Multiple running examples survive in museums and private collections. The Tank Museum at Bovington holds 3, including one in operational condition demonstrated at Tankfest events. Private examples have sold for between $33,000 and $95,000, with at least one in the United States retaining functional weapons. In Britain, the Saladin achieved a different kind of immortality. It was Matchbox model number 67, and was also produced by Corgi, Dinky and Action Man, making it a fixture of British childhood in the 1960s and 70s. More British children probably commanded a Saladin than any other armoured vehicle in history. 1958, Holyhead Road, Coventry, a vehicle that looked like someone had made a terrible mistake. A tank gun on 6 rubber tyres, 12 years late, underpowered by modern standards. No night vision, no NBC protection, no stabilisation, and yet it worked. It worked in the baking streets of Aden, in the jungles of Borneo, on the mountains of Oman, and on the roads of Northern Ireland, even with a wooden bung shoved down its barrel. It worked because British engineers at Alvis understood something their competitors did not. In the real world, the vehicle that survives wins. The 76mm HESH round could kill anything short of a main battle tank. The 6-wheel drive system kept moving when wheels were blown off. The Rolls-Royce engine ran on fuel that would choke anything else. Over 20 nations bought it. Some are still using it. The Saladin was not elegant, it was not cheap, it was not fast, it was British, and it worked when it mattered most.